Bible prophecy is active and unfolding daily. Zechariah 12, Isaiah 17, Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38. Here is what the LameStream Media is not telling you.
Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's newscast. Remember all the talk a couple of weeks ago about Russia pulling out of Syria? Right. Well, Russian air power in Syria has remained substantial, with newly deployed attack helicopters replacing many of the fighter bombers that returned home. Russian President Vladimir Putin may have changed the shape of the forces, but he did not evacuate. He simply brought in different assets and returned the things he had less use for. And now there's more emphasis on air support by attack helicopters. So, Russia still has a very significant force in Syria. From Reuters, in the 2 weeks since Putin's announcement of a partial withdrawal from Syria, Russia has in fact shipped more equipment and supplies to Syria than it has brought back in the same period. The shipments suggest Russia is working intensively to maintain its military infrastructure in Syria and to supply the Syrian army so that it can scale up again swiftly if need be. Moreover, Russia appears to have more than a dozen military vessels in the Mediterranean, including the Zeleny Dol warship equipped with Caliber cruise missiles. From Israel Hayom, while ISIS is moving from offense to defense across Syria and Iraq, it is stepping up its activities in Sinai and in the Syrian Golan Heights. Despite the relentless war Egypt has been waging against the jihadi group, the hold ISIS has on Sinai remains firm as it launches devastating terrorist attacks against Egyptian security forces. And ISIS is gaining ground in the southern part of the Syrian Golan Heights as well. Its proxies, such as Yarmouk Martyrs Brigade, has been tightening its grip on the area at the expense of more moderate rebel groups. Attempted ISIS terrorist attacks in Israel are only a matter of time. Further from Reuters, Israel's neighbors are buying arms on a scale that threatens Israel's regional military superiority. The whole landscape seems to be shifting and changing. The pieces on the chessboard, if you will, are all shifting around into new positions just as of late. Then from the Wall Street Journal, American law still prohibits U.S. and foreign banks from dealing in dollars with Iran, despite the July nuclear agreement. The Treasury Department designates Iran's entire financial system as a, quote, primary money laundering concern, close quote, due to Tehran's nuclear and missile programs and support for international terrorist groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. Meanwhile, the Obama administration is preparing to give Iran limited access to U.S. dollars as part of loser sanctions on Tehran. From the Washington Free Beacon, Senators Mark Kirk and Marco Rubio expressed concerns last Wednesday in a letter to Secretary of the Treasury Jacob Lew over a plan to provide Iran with an expanded package of sanctions relief that would include access to the U.S. dollar, stating that, quote, any such effort would benefit Iran's financiers of international terrorism, human rights abuses, and ballistic missile threats, close quote. Honestly, my friends, Barack Hussein Obama, enemy in chief. One of our friends on my YouTube channel, Gerard, posted a link to this website under last Thursday's word study, something quite appropriate to our study on the book of Jude, as well as our current study on the book of Romans, and most of all, a very serious sign of the times. Hugh My, transcending human biology through robotics. From their About page, quote, "We want to transplant your brain into an elegantly designed bionic body called Hugh My. It will use a brain-computer interface to communicate with the sensory organs and limbs of your new bionic body. Artificial intelligence will be integrated into synthetic organs so they can operate independently. Sensor technology will allow you to feel the essence of human experience. As your brain matures," I'm still quoting, "genetic engineering will combat the aging process." Aging process of what? The brain? That's all that's left. Quoting again, "Advancements in nanotechnology will offer extensive tissue repair and regeneration, including the repair of individual brain cells." Close quote. And one B.J. Murphy writes in a blog on the site, quote, "Keep in mind that the human mind is all there truly is, of which makes us human in the first place." Close quote. Pure insanity, if you ask me. The human brain is all there truly is that makes us human? How about our taste buds, our sense of smell, emotions? You know, you think that's strictly the brain? You think the physical body? Anyway, it's just, I just found it amazing that, they're making such plans. It just shows me, my friends, that we are in the last minutes. Things are getting so out of hand. You'll see this graphic at the end of today's video, as well as a text link to it beneath this video. Last Thursday, we started a study on the book of Romans, Romiyim. And if you've never read the book of Romans, you should join in on this one. It's an amazing study to undertake. And it's just, pointing at a lot of things that are going on today that 20, 30 years ago, no one would believe us. If we told them these things were happening, they would think we were nuts. Well, they are happening. Turning to wars and rumors of wars, on Tuesday, March 29th, from Ma'an News, armed clashes broke out between Palestinian youths and Palestinian Authority security forces when they raided the old city of Nablus, leaving 13 wounded. Nablus Governor Akram Rujub told Ma'an that PA security forces were attempting to detain a suspect in a recent murder case when clashes erupted with armed men in and around the old city. 7 Palestinian youths and 5 members of the PA security forces were reportedly injured. Then on Wednesday, March 30th, from the New York Times, an Islamic State operative who was arrested last week in a Paris suburb, had amassed an arsenal of weapons and explosives of an unprecedented size, reinforcing fears that militants are planning additional assaults on Europe. And continued threats are being published on the web from various terrorist organizations saying that Europe and America are, on their plate to create more problems. Then turning to our Intifada update, I trust you've noticed the lack of Palestinian terror attacks being reported lately. From the Jerusalem Post, more than 3,500 police officers working around the clock have helped turn the tide in the wave of Palestinian terror attacks in Jerusalem. With the last major attack in Jerusalem having taken place on March 9th, the relative lull in violence is attributable to hypervigilance, preemptive tactics, and extensive intelligence coordination. Over the last couple of months, there's been a change in tracking and finding potential terrorists, and police units are deeply involved in tracking social media sites where potential terrorists are making contact with one another and transferring information. Based on this information, police have been able to reach potential terrorists and have them arrested before they can carry out their attacks. Hallelujah. March saw 6 shootings, stabbings, and vehicle rammings, compared to 56 in February, 45 in January, and 40 in December. At the same time, the number of firebombing and rock-throwing incidents remained largely constant. There were 220 cases of rock-throwing in March, and 23 firebomb attacks. From Haaretz, last month saw fewer Palestinian attacks than the 155 in February, and in October, when the wave of terror began, there were 620 attacks. From the Jerusalem Post, the IDF remain on high, discreet alert, investigating every suspicious activity it detects multiple times per day, and Hamas holds its fire as it rebuilds its capabilities. On Sunday, April 3rd, from Ynet News, an Israeli Arab woman stabbed an Israeli woman at the Rosh Ha'ayin industrial area before being subdued by a security guard. Then, in a later incident on that same day, a Palestinian who pulled a knife on Israeli border policemen stationed at Tapua Junction in the West Bank was arrested without injuries. Now, looking at our review of last week's news, in the past 2 weeks, Russia has in fact shipped more equipment and supplies to Syria than it had brought back. The Obama administration is preparing to give Iran limited access to U.S. dollars, in effect helping to promote Islamic terrorism around the world. While ISIS is moving from offense to defense across Syria and Iraq, it is stepping up its activities in Sinai, and the Syrian Golan Heights. Israel's neighbors are buying arms on a scale that threatens Israel's regional military superiority. Things are ramping up for the fulfillment of Ezekiel 38, Psalm 83, and Isaiah 17 as well. Armed clashes broke out between Palestinian youths and Palestinian Authority security forces, leaving 13 wounded. An arsenal of weapons and explosives of an unprecedented size were discovered in a Paris suburb, reinforcing fears that militants are planning additional assaults on Europe. An Israeli Arab woman stabbed an Israeli woman, and a Palestinian pulled a knife on Israeli border policemen. And that, my friends, is what the LameStream Media is not telling you. Haba willing, I'll see you here again next week. Until then, stay safe. Shalom.
Crowded rooms, I need more space than I consume. Enough is time alone with you, underneath the naked moon, sharing confidential moods and making chatter. Mockingbird nocturnal sings notations of eternal things, entering the quantum breeze, flying not for want of wings. He lights his gaze on you and me, simply because we matter.